Hey y'all, we have hit a couple of milestones recently and I just wanted to share those with you. The first one is that we hit 500 subscribers and I just thank God for all of you. I do have a prayer journal, so if you have any requests, I write them down in here and I look up scriptures so that I can pray over you for whatever it is that you have a need for. And the second milestone that we hit is that I finally, after how many months, taught through the first section of my book, Discovering the Heart of God Through Bible Journaling. And so we finally got through the first section. It has been a year. It's been a year. My father-in-law came and stayed with us in February, and he was back at my in-laws a couple months later when they put him on hospice, and he passed away in July. And so that's been a whole process. We've done a lot of traveling because of that, and he was living 4 hours away, so we would go whenever we could on the weekends. And he was 92 and he had a great life, and we spent lots of time with him as much as we could over the years. And so we're just grateful for family and family's doing well. And so that was one. The other incident that we had this year, my daughter's hospital in town where she was working shut down, and so did another one in the area and several clinics. So there were 1,400 people put out of work, including my daughter, of course. And she decided that because she's young, she and her husband are 21, and it would be easier for them to move somewhere else than to have another nurse or doctor in the area. As much as the other medical facilities tried to absorb some of the people who lost their jobs, they certainly weren't able to absorb 1,400 people. So knowing that some of her co-workers had families that they would have to uproot and move to new cities, and she didn't want to take one of those job positions where it forced somebody else to move, and it would be a lot harder for them. So she and her husband decided to move, and they moved to 12 hours away. So all of our kids are gone now. But that's also meant that we've had a lot of traveling. We helped them move in March, and I flew down in May for Mother's Day. We went back in July for my husband's vacation. We were down there for a week. And we're going down next week again for a giant family football game. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm about traveled out this year, though. I'm about traveled out this year. And they still want us to come down for Thanksgiving, but I don't think I could do it. So that's been the year. And in the process of it all, I've been teaching through this book. I'm not as far along as I wanted to be, but I'm still working on it. I'm still plugging away. And we've gone through section 1, and I am starting section 2 today. And section 2 is called Growing Abundantly. So this is more tips and techniques. And what else does it say in here? It's just a lot of tips and techniques. So the first section, which I have actually put in a playlist called In the Beginning. So there's a playlist on my YouTube channel called In the Beginning. And you can find all the basics of Bible journaling on that playlist. And this one is going to be about different tips and techniques that you can use to dive deeper into the whole Bible journaling process. So I just want to say thank you for sticking with me through all of my starts and stops and all of the things. I do pray for you. I I'm so grateful for you, and I just want to say thank you. So with that being said, let's get started on section 2. Today we're going to talk about watercolor techniques. So there are various things that you can do to get various results, I guess you could say. This one we're discussing is tissue dabbing. So these little clouds here came from tissue dabbing. So I'll kind of recreate this and show you how that works down here. And I just have like a, I don't know, like a 1/2 inch dagger brush that I pretty much have done everything with. I love dagger brushes, big ones, small ones. You can get a really nice fine line, or you can do a whole bunch with the whole width of the brush. So let's get started. We'll start with the sky, and I'll just use a blue. This is way too much blue, so we'll add some water to it. And I'm not going to worry about the various shades that it is right now. I'm just going to get it going. I'll bring it down about 2/3, 3/4 of the way down. And you know, when you look at the sky, especially in the evening when the sun's starting to set, you get different lightnesses and, you know, let's see, how do I want to say this? A lot of times you'll find that it's darker up towards the sky at night or in the evening, and lighter towards the ground where the horizon is. And so we'll do this. So this is a paper towel. I'm just going to find a clean spot on it and dab off. While this is still wet, I'm going to dab little clouds in here. So however you want to shape your clouds, I don't even know. There's a scientist out there somewhere that could tell me what kind of clouds those were, but I'll just do a couple of these and just let them go. Okay, so these are even, you know, the sky's darker, obviously. You can do lots of things that way. So let's work on the ground or the grass. And a lot of times when I'm working on a landscape like this, I like to start the ground while this blue is still wet, because what happens is your green bleeds into the sky above, and that helps to create just some essentially like background trees and that sort of thing. So I'm going to pull a dark green to put in the background like this, and I'll just let them do their thing and bleed. Okay. And of course you can make whatever trees or anything that you want, and just kind of let it go and let the watercolors do their thing. They like to spread, and so just let them spread. Okay, so I'm not going to bother with trees. This is enough to help you understand like how this all works. But in a very short amount of time, you can do a little landscape like this. The next technique we're going to talk about is alcohol drops. Now, I will give you a caveat right off the bat. These are my alcohol drops, but this is not how it's supposed to look. This was a happy accident on something that I was trying it out, and then the alcohol just spread way too much, and so I went over it with the still wet paint, and this is what resulted. But let me show you what I intended to do. I have a little fish outline over here, and we're going to pop some water on here with lots of water. Sometimes it's easiest just to get your paper wet ahead of time and then figure out your colors afterwards, because you really don't want your paint edges here to dry. You'll end up with lines. So sometimes it's just best to get everything wet first. And I'm not even going to, I have a little sketch of a fish here, but I'm not even going to worry about like staying within the lines there, because the fish is going to be blue on blue. And so I can just go right over the top of the water. Okay, so now that I have this all wet, I'm going to go in and add more blue. And you can do whatever shades of blue that you want to. I just am pulling whatever is on my palette. Oh. Okay, so we'll do that. Or purple. Blue or purple. And let it do its thing, you know, because it's darker down near the bottom of the water. So we'll do that. Okay. Then you have alcohol. So this is just alcohol from whatever, super cheap. And let me grab a teeny tiny brush, because I used a liner brush and it was too, I used this liner brush for this, it was still too much alcohol on there. So even though it has a very fine point, it held too much alcohol. So while this is still wet, I'm going to dip a paintbrush and shake it good, because I want little dots, not giant dots like I had the first time. So I'm going to pop little dots of alcohol on here. And the alcohol diffuses the paint. So you can see everywhere that you put the alcohol. This is what it's supposed to turn out like. This did not work right, but that's because I had too much alcohol on my brush on this one. That did not work, but I discovered something new, and this one is what I intended to do the first time. You can see how the alcohol bubbles are kind of, this is how it's supposed to turn out. That's not it. Okay, just to let you know. This particular technique is about doing a color wash and then using a stencil and a baby wipe to remove some of the paint that you put down. So here's how we're going to do that. I have, let's do a different color here, just for the fun of it. Bright yellow. See if I can get more off of there. And I mean, you can use a variety of colors, a variety of shades of yellow. So whatever background that you want to do, it doesn't have to be monotone color at all by any means. Okay, and then we'll let this dry, and we'll come back and go over the top of that. So coming back to the stencil and baby wipe technique, I have a baby wipe. It's damp, and if you don't have kids, I'm still going to recommend baby wipes. They're great to have in the car when you're driving and you're eating and you need to wipe your hands about, or for whatever reason. They're really handy to have around. But this is how we do this. So we have the stencil and we have this page, which is dried now on this side, and we're going to lift off the paint that is on here, but we're going to stick within the stencil that we have. And so we just need to rub back and forth. And the reason we use a baby wipe versus like a paper towel, I suppose you could use a washcloth, really, like some sort of raggy thing, because a paper towel would shred doing this, but a baby wipe or a washcloth even would, it's able to take the paint off without ruining your paper. You just keep rubbing until you get like the desired effect of how much paint you would like off, because you could do just a little shadow of a lift, or you can do like a full color lift. It's really up to you what you want to do. And again, this is kind of a neat way to just do like a background on a page that you're doing. And so you just kind of do what you want to do. And I like having things random, and so I'm just going to leave it like that. And that is your baby wipe lifting. Okay, so this technique is a saran wrap crinkle. So the crinkly section here, where you can see like the edges of the lines, all had to do with, let me find it, this piece of saran wrap that I kind of like scrunched together in both directions. I just kind of scrunched it up, right? Okay, and it gives you this little crinkly, these little crinkly effects. So I don't know, my lighting is going from morning to afternoon, and so it's a little off, but you can kind of see how it gives us really neat effect. And I thought that would be so cool to do like church windows. And so here's how I did that one. So again, I'm going to get these all wet. Out, you can see like right here, it crinkled some of it out, but this is a great way to just add a background to your Bible page, or you might find some other things that you would like to do with it, but it's kind of a neat technique. Okay, so colors. I'm just going to dab, just literally just dab colors on. Watch it all flow, pick up a different color. I'm not even cleaning my brush in between. I'm just picking up something else. And let's go to something dark and dramatic like this. And I'm just kind of filling in some of the spots that there's white space yet. And I'll rinse my brush and go for something a little brighter. Now the yellow that I put on this side went super bright, but it ended up kind of blending in with some of the other colors anyway, so it didn't really matter too much in the end. So just dab everything in. You don't have to be fussy about it, just the color on the paper. Maybe I'll go for a little bit of purple. Definitely dramatic color. Okay, a little more over here. All right. Then you take your crinkled up paper and you just pop it on there. And it's going to diffuse those colors, spread them around. And as it dries, it's going to create these little edges and things through there. So we're going to set this aside and bring it back later. So on this little church window, I have pulled the cellophane off, and Here we have like all the little, you can see like the little crackly pieces where the cellophane concentrated some of that paint. And then it's just a matter of going around them with a darker color to make a window frame. But it's kind of cool. You could also kind of go in between some of the colors with a marker. Let me see if I have one here. So if I have just a regular micron pen, and you can travel in between to make these. What is this window called? A stained glass window, yes. So you could always make your stained glass the leading lines in your window. Just by going around each of these little colors, or the, you can decide how you want to do that. Okay, like that. Okay, so let's talk about a splattering technique. Now this one is super simple, and I'll just show you. I'm gonna put a sky in here and then some grass, and then we're gonna just splatter the flowers right on. Super easy. Really, really easy. Okay, and some green. Again, I just let it bleed up into the blue while it's still wet, and it looks like, some background bushes or variations in grass length, that sort of thing. Okay, this does not need to be so much. Well, that's fine. We'll go with it. All right, I'm going to take some of this color off. So sometimes I end up with too much color, and you just pull it off. And that works just fine too. It keeps this little bit wet, and that'll work when we're splattering because it'll tend to bleed more. Okay, I'm loading it with a lot of paint, okay? And I will use just a piece of scratch paper like this to cover up. I don't want the splatters in the sky, so I'm going to cover it up until about there. Makes sense? And then I'm just going to, you can splatter in this manner. Sometimes I just tap on it with my finger like so. And they look like little poppies in a field. So I'll pull up a different red, make sure that it's loaded. You can see how much paint is on there. And just splatter it. So if that's not working, I'm gonna get a little more water on it. If your paint is too thick, just dip it in the water and you're good to go. So we'll let this dry, and when we're done, it'll look like this. We'll add a few stems, and you're able to make a very simple, little landscape. But you could also use this just for background. You could get your Bible page wet and then just tap colors onto it. This is great for I've done like dark pages, like a night sky, and then splattered gold or purples or pinks or light colors onto it, and it creates this little star like effect. So there's different ways that you can use this. For our little landscape here, all I have to do is grab some green for some stems, because I have a fairly dark green there. I want a really dark green so that it shows up. Oh, too much. Too much. There's still a lot. So let me wipe that off a bit. And then I can go in and start making stems with this. And with stems, you kind of want them to kind of all go in different directions. My goodness, there's a lot of paint on this brush. I guess you want it a little bit more watered down. Okay, so you don't need to put your stems up and down necessarily. That's not always how God grows things. You know, they often have like a little lean to them, right? And because you wouldn't necessarily see the stems in the back, you really just need to kind of put them in the front of these bottom pieces, right? So it kind of gives you just the illusion of the flowers. But it's also just a super simple way to add some character to your paintings and your Bible study. Right, there you go. This technique is this ombre look. So you want dark on one end, pull the same shade down to a lighter version of it on this end. For this one, I'm using a larger brush. This is a 3/4 inch dagger, and it holds a lot of water, and sometimes that's just easier to get a good full wash on there first. So let's do this one in a different color, just for the fun of it. Now, some things that you would be able to use this for would be like, again, a sky, like a landscape sky. You could do like a blue purple on the top and do pinks and oranges on the bottom and kind of blend them towards the middle to do like a sunset. So I am just soaking this paper first, and then I've got my color ready, and you're just going to go from the top to the bottom. So as your brush is running out of paint, it's becoming lighter on the bottom, and eventually this will all tend to blend together. If I want it a little bit darker, I can add more color. Start on the top again and just go down and just try to go as evenly as possible. And we can let that dry, and you have this ombre effect. Now, if you feel like you need to add a little more, that's fine too. Just start again. And just go over it again. And if this seems like too much, then start at the bottom and just start taking some off. Okay, and there's your ombre effect. This technique that we want to do is I call it a smooshing technique. So you have an old piece of packaging like this, just a cellophane piece of packaging, and we don't put paint directly in the paper, we put it onto the packaging. So there's a couple ways you could do this. You could get your paper wet first before you do this, or you could leave it dry. You're gonna end up with a couple different results. So I'll just show you kind of how I experimented and was working on this one. So let's do, I'm gonna choose a different color palette for this. And I'll start with the light colors first. Great. And you want this good and wet so that it kind of starts to separate on the page. You can see where, you can always pull a little bit off, or you could add more water. That's up to you. If I'm not liking how solid that is, I think I want to add more water and pull a little bit off of there. So I'm just dabbing this, pulling it off with a a dry brush essentially and setting it to the side. Okay, so you're just popping it on your page. I have a paper towel underneath because this one tends to be a little bit messy, and you can watch it just smush in there. Right, and then while it's still wet even, or you could dry it, you could let it dry and you could do it again, or you could just leave it wet. But I'm going to add a little bit of green to this. Okay, and then I'm going to turn around and do that again, and I might do it in like a different location on the paper. And you can see all these little I don't even know what to call that. Like, it just has this texture to it. That's so cool. And so this is a lot of the background on my pages in my Bible. I will just do smooshing because it's just cool, and you get lots of different textures from it. You can just keep going until you run out of paint on your cellophane, and then you can add more colors. So I'll come back in with a bit of a blue. Oh, maybe that's not quite so blue. More of a green. All right, let's get a blue. I like this dark blue. I'm a huge fan of indigo. Oh my gosh, I love indigo. Okay. So I'm going to add this to different spots on my page. Because the paper, because this is watercolor paper and it has a texture to it, it picks it up a little bit differently. And so it really has, you see the texture of the paper in and how that works. And if you wanted that a little bit, you know, less textured, you just add a little bit more water to your cellophane. So here I'm going to show you one other technique. I do have a spray water bottle, and I'm just going to spray a little bit on here and let these colors kind of blend. So the watercolors are still wet, and we're just going to spray it and let them do their thing. So they will start to flow. That's how you end up with these, like you can see where this red diffuse a little bit, and you can see that the emphasis of the color on the outside of where the lines are. And so it has just a really cool effect, and it's fun to experiment with. So you could try this technique. Another thing you can do while you have puddles on this is you can roll it around your page. So you might just decide to it starts to move and flow, and you can force it in different directions and kind of get it to move around the page a little bit. You can see how it starts to make drippy lines there in whatever direction that you're going, and just add some interest to your painting. Okay, so here are your different watercolor techniques to use in your Bible journaling or your journaling. And they are saran wrap smooshing. You have alcohol drops here. You have baby wipe on a stencil here to lift the paint. You have splattering techniques here. You've got a tissue dabbing technique, you have an ombre technique, and you have a saran wrap scrunching. And so that's what we've got for today. And stay tuned, we've got lots more to come. Thanks so much for watching.